December, we are eating anything. In January, one
Anyhow.
New Year resolution will be maybe to reduce weight,
yes,
and to eat healthy.
Yeah.
And the way things are and the economy is, are we eating healthy as a country from where you sit?
Ben, thank you very much. And I think you are putting it very well, that it is a festive season.
Yeah.
Maybe I would want to, first of all, say that as nutritionists, we are grateful for the time. And also, I want to say that, you know, as a CEO of the Nutritionist Council, it is important that we talk about nutrition.
Yeah.
Yes. And you're asking whether we are eating well. Yes, we are eating well. That is true, according to what you think. But I think the expertise can give us a picture or a lens whether we are eating well. And I think that is our conversation today. Yes.
And now, because it's a festive season, mostly we overindulge in terms of how we eat, and especially when it comes to meats like nyama choma. 1 month can make all the difference between good health and bad. Am I on the right track?
You could be on the right track, but what is important is that everything you do it in moderation. There's nothing wrong with eating. There's nothing wrong with eating nyama choma, for example. But as you do it, you must do it with moderation as a lens. So all about food. Food is anything that cannot cause harm in the body. That is how we define food, including chewing gum.
It's also part of food.
Yes, but when it comes to eating, there are only 2 approaches of eating. The first approach is you want to see how varied is your diet. And also you want to see which selections do you make as a choice from different food groups. When there's a balance, it means that you balance within the food groups and also balance within the variety. Variety means different types within a particular food group.
All right.
So when you now talk of nyama choma, because I think that seems to be focused, maybe your assumption is that nyama choma is the theory behind obesity.
The reason being,
that's not true.
You will eat it for maybe a couple of weeks or almost every day.
You can consume nyama choma every day, but it can also be part of your dish. What about it? Moderation. You must take it sparingly, and that requires selection by expertise. So we need to be knowledgeable on how we select, when, at what time, during what occasions, how long. You focus on it.
And let's open this conversation and talking about nutrition and dietetics. What exactly are they, and why is it important in the medical field? And
so, Ben, I think now you have come back home, because that is the first point that we need to understand as Kenyans. Nutrition and, you have put it very well, dietetics, a term that many people do not know how to pronounce. Now, when we talk about nutrition, we are looking at the science of food and nutrient. So 2 things are important there: food and nutrient. Many times people have said, if you want protein, then you eat meat. That is not correct in science. Meat is a food. Protein is a nutrient. So meat, for example, has a number of nutrients, including protein. So when you study science of food and nutrient, and you relate it with the human physiological processes, normal function of the human being, then that is what is called nutrition. Now, when it comes to dietetics, it's the use of diet or a combination of foods in management of healthy and unhealthy condition of a human being. Mark my words, healthy and unhealthy. Many times people think that you only need a dietitian when you are sick or when you experience any form of ailment. But you need a dietitian even when you are healthy. Why? To maintain a healthy condition. So when it comes to the training, particularly for the Kenya Nutritionists and Dietitians Institute, our prescription for universities and colleges is that there must be a combination of nutrition, understanding, and also dietetics. So the science of food and nutrients and how it relates with your body is the nutrition. But the use of diet or a combination of foods to manage healthy and unhealthy condition is the dietetics. Now, both of them go together. Now, in the nutrition field, we have 6 sub-areas that we focus on. We have public health nutrition, which is dealing with the general public's health. For example, when we talk about different policies affecting the nation, a public health nutritionist should be on focus to help us understand the dimensions of public health in relation to the foods we consume, either in the supermarket or in the open air markets. We also have community nutrition, which focuses right inside the household, looking at the mother, the child, and the people at that nuclear level. And then we also have clinical nutrition. These are the groups that now focus on diagnosis within the health facilities, starting from level 3 onwards, and sometimes even level 1 to level 3. Then we have a food science nutritionist. These are those who should be spearheading the authentication of food labels. For example, when you buy a food product in the supermarket, normally we have labels there. Somebody says this amount of calories, this amount of potassium, this amount of protein. A food scientist should be the one in charge to see that what is on the label, for example, is not a myth, but corresponds to what is inside. That is still a nutritionist. And then we also have a clinical dietitian. When a clinical nutritionist has performed the assessment and diagnosis, that is supposed to be passed to a clinical dietitian who then interprets the diagnosis. When they interpret, they will tell you exactly how much you need as a patient or a normal client in the facility when it comes to total calories and even micronutrient requirements. So this particular specialty is a higher level because then they will tell you that you need 2,000 kilocalories and you don't go beyond that. If you do, you will gain weight. If you don't take enough, you will lose weight. So then either you can go underweight or overweight. This person also will think of another specialty called a food service diet therapist.
We are still under nutrition.
We are still, no, this is now dietetics.
Yes.
So what we are talking about is that on the dietetic side, we have a clinical dietitian, we have a food service diet therapy. On the nutrition side, we have a public health nutritionist, a food science nutritionist, a clinical nutritionist, and a community nutritionist. Those are 6. These are BSc level training. Now come down, we have nutrition technologist and dietitian technologist, still in the same categories. All these operate in health facilities. And then we have the technicians. That is the certificate level, who can help us at the lower levels of level 5. Now this knowledge has not been understood, and that is why sometimes it's very difficult to say that nutrition has impacted. Now that we have trained, this is where we need to start. We must understand who is an expert in nutrition. Is it anybody who speaks about nutrition? When somebody says overweight is no good, a nutritionist will say it depends on what kind of overweight.
How is that?
Very interesting.
Yes, because when you're overweight,
because we have a group of people. We have a group of people in our society that appear big, but it's not a high risk. We have very thin group of people that appear small, but at high risk. Why? Because the fat content which is stored in the body is too higher compared to the one who is overweight. This other one is at a higher risk if they have bad fat stored. And so you might find somebody thin and they suffer from NCDs. And you'll also find somebody is overweight, but they're healthy. But there's a particular overweight that chokes the organs, particularly if the fat is around the organs. That is very dangerous. So an expert will do diagnosis and assess exactly whether you are at higher risk depending on your weight. Even though we need to maintain weight that is within the prescribed BMI, that is 20 to 25. When you consider your height and the weight ratio, that is the most healthy. Body mass index. But now we have gone even to beyond body mass index. We are looking at body mass index in the form of BIA, which looks at the volume also. And then we look at the fat content in the body. So we should be more concerned about the visceral fats compared to the weight ratio, weight-height ratio.
And maybe in simpler terms for Kenyans who are watching, what constitutes a healthy diet?
Good. Let me tell you what constitutes a healthy diet. At primary level of knowledge, we were told that a healthy diet is a balanced diet. So you talk about protein, you talk about carbohydrates, vegetables, put together, and of course, at a higher level, water on the sides. Right now, we are talking about variety. So when we are talking about vegetables, you need to think about different types of vegetables, because each has a contribution in terms of nutrients, micronutrients. When it's about meat, we also talk about the variety of meats. So we have the red meat, we have the white meat. The white meat comes from fish, for example, very healthy compared to the red meat because of the fats that are stored, bad fats, some of them, stored in red meats. And then also, when it comes to fruits and fruits only, we also have a variety of fruits. When it comes to cereals also, we have a variety of cereals. So when you can balance within the varieties, within food groups, or you can choose different foods from different food groups, that constitutes a healthy diet. So in Kenya, for a normal person, we are using a food guide pyramid, which requires that as much as you want to live longer, at the base we must have enough of fruits and vegetables. But on the side also, you must have a variety of cereals. Why? You cannot escape cereals because of the B vitamins, which is very important in the metabolism of any other food like protein, like carbohydrates. So we need enough of vegetables, cereals, and we need to reduce red meat and substitute it with white meat most of the time, and avoid sugar. So if we were to talk about healthy diet from a layman's perspective, then we will talk about more vegetables.
And even cereals as well.
Enough of cereals, yes.
Just hold the thought. I'm informed that we need to cross over to Swiss Lenana Mount Hotel, where Elimu Yetu Coalition is giving an address on the state of education in the country, and currently speaking is Joseph Wasihongo, the national coordinator, Elimu Yetu Coalition. Let's first of all hear what he has to say.
Have made developments in terms of teacher recruitment, on better schemes of service, Others have done infrastructure development. Others are implementing effective school feeding programs. Counties are at different levels. What we are calling for is the effective coordination of this subsector within education, because it is very, very essential that this particular subsector be coordinated well. So we are calling upon the Council of Governors, the Teacher Service Commission, and the ministry to work out in a way to ensure that when it comes to early childhood education, counties move at the same pace. Quality assurance. Assessing the delivery of desired curriculum calls for routine strengthening of the quality assurance section. We recommend the Ministry of Education to consider employing more of quality assurance officers. In a recent engagement with the ministry, we actually realized that we have less than 1,000 quality assurance officers across the country. This is one thing, this is one of the areas that really we need a huge improvement when it comes to the education sector. We cannot talk of the delivery of quality education when we do not have sufficient quality assurance officers. Climate change. There is need for disaster preparedness in our schools to avert the impacts of climate change to education, such as flooding and others. The government should work together with stakeholders to ensure that there is a strong climate change agenda in our schools. Donor funds. The ministry is implementing projects that are funded by donors, and frankly speaking, if you removed the funds coming from donors, from projects, in the form of KPIL, in the form of SICWIP, if you removed those funding, chances are the sector would collapse. Anything positive happening at the moment is largely because, to a great extent, because of the donors. Even the project of the 11,000 classes is actually funded by a project of the donors. So what you are seeing...
That is Joseph Wasihongo, who is the National Coordinator Elimu Yetu Coalition. They are speaking about the state of education in the country, and just to point out some of the things that he has mentioned: increased capitation in regards to education, more quality assurance officers, and also talking about improvement of infrastructure. We cannot talk about quality education if we have not improved our infrastructure. And also climate change, not only impacting schools, but it should also cascade down to all the learning institution and curriculum as is wanted in regards to climate change. We'll be getting a little bit or more on that in our subsequent bulletin at 12 and also at 1. But just in case you joined us, I'm with David Okeo, who is the CEO of Kenya Nutritionist and Dietitians Institute. And we are looking at the role of nutrition and dietetics in healthcare. And more specifically, because we are in the festive season, how do you also remain healthy, and also will be telling us how these are also being inculcated in our health systems. Before we crossed over, yes.
Maybe before you ask me any more questions,
yes,
I just want to comment on the state of education curriculum, and I'm just glad that I've heard about the issue of climate change, and what is missing is how it relates with nutrition. We've talked about that quite a lot. When you talk of healthy diet now, we are getting to the level where we are going to talk about the healthy planet. And that is where diet, which consider the planetary health, is important. So issues of climatic change is also part of nutrition because of the carbon footprints and the choice of food that we have. Yeah. There's a higher level, but it's just because of that comment. I think it is something that needs to be picked up, particularly in the competency-based curriculum, where nutrition is prescribed, but we have not given is the approach of how to grow food, which type, that then also affects the climate. I think that's something that needs to be picked into.
Yes.
From that statement. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for that input as well. But before we crossed over to know more about how the education system is, we were looking at what constitutes a healthy
diet. Yes.
You were clearing on a point?
Yes, I said that before at the primary level, we used to talk about protein, carbohydrates, and vegetables. Mm-hmm. The main aim was that vegetables and fruits will give you vitamins, carbohydrates would give you energy, and of course, protein would give you bodybuilding components of food, because they are the building blocks of the body. That is still a good knowledge for primary level. Right now, we do no longer talk about protein or carbohydrates or vegetables. We talk about variety and we talk about food groups. So in the food groups, we are talking about selections as per the type of food. But within each food group, we also have variety of foods. So when you're picking from the vegetable, you must also have variety of vegetables, variety of fruits. So that we don't say that if you've taken a mango, you can have your mango throughout the week. You can balance mango with other fruits that are available within the locality. And that will constitute a varied diet. Now, if you select vegetables, you also select meat, whether red or white, and you select also the cereals, you have a balance based on food groups. So when you're choosing from the meat category, it's good to look for healthy meat category. And I said, white meat is a better option compared to the red meat. And I want to also add that most of the time you get white meat from food like fish. And when you talk about fish, then the nutrient that comes very fast is omega-3 fatty acid, which is a healthy fatty acid.
It comes from fish?
Yes. Of course, fish, but also we have some oils that have it, like olive oil. Olive oil is very expensive, but we can get fish, and fish ranges from small one to the largest. Yeah, we have the omenas and the Nile perch. There's a good variety of meat compared to the red meat. Now, you asked me about goat choma. It's not bad, but I will say sparingly. You have to moderate. So when you do food group selection and you do variety selection, that constitutes a healthy diet. Now, for you to make it healthy, you need an expert who is properly trained to come up with a plate design that will accommodate locally available foods within those varieties, within the food across the food groups. And that is why we have nutritionists that are properly trained to do that at village level, even at city level. We have these technicians, we have the technologists. They are all available within the country. So we need a service of a qualified nutritionist. Now, how are we going to ensure that this happens? For example, as we train, like just yesterday, we licensed about 712 nutritionists in the country. This is adding to the 13,500 we have in the country. Now, when they come to the delivery of services, we know that everybody cannot access a nutritionist because of the population. But now we have online access. Just very soon, we are going to introduce what we call the telemedicine services, specific for nutrition, where we will prescribe diet and have access of dietary information across the country. And our nutritionists are going to spearhead this process through a single onboarding package at the Institute. So this will come in electronic form, and it will also come in SMS form, just to educate Kenyans. And so that they can have basic selection chart, which is for a healthy diet that can be implemented even at rural level or at city level. So that we bring back our traditional foods approach to move away from the Western selection type. So we want to move from the Western type and bring the traditional aspect, and particularly borrow also from healthy cuisines like the Mediterranean diet, for example. Mm-hmm. So that is what is going to constitute a healthy diet for the nation. Mm-hmm. So variety, and then across food groups.
You're right. And how important is nutrition in maintaining the overall good health of someone and even preventing diseases? We have seen that the cases of diabetes have gone high in the last couple of years. We cannot compare the year 2000 and 2022 and even 1980s or 90s as well.
Yes, I think maybe let me focus on diabetes first. Mm-hmm. You know, there are two types of diabetes. We have the juvenile type, which a child can be born, and of course already they have fluctuating sugar levels. And we also have a lifestyle-related diabetes, which is called type 2. Now I'm told in the science that we also have type 3. But let me concentrate on the type 2, which is as a result of failure in the metabolic process. That's why we call diabetes metabolic syndrome. Now, diabetes can be reversed. And
both A and B, as you say?
Most of the time, the juvenile one can be maintained. That is what really requires medication. But you can also apply healthy diet if you are disciplined to maintain the constant fluctuations. But the type 2 one can be reversed using diet. I know of cases where someone has been with diabetes for almost 8 years on medication, but our specialists at our institutions have reversed that. They're now on normal diet, no medication.
And they're not taking any medicine?
No medication.
What about the age factor?
This is no age factor in it. What it is, what is
mostly in Kenya between ages of maybe from 40s going...
Even 30 you can have diabetes depending on your lifestyle. But then you can reverse that fluctuating sugar levels using a healthy diet combination. So we have seen this happen. This is what, I'm sorry, the farmer would not want to accept, that it is possible to use diet to maintain sugar levels stable within the body as opposed to using drugs. The nutritionist can do that. Of course, some have talked about the keto diet where you try as much as possible to limit the carbohydrate intake and enhance vegetable and fruit and of course protein. But of course, what we are saying is that that is just for a moment. If you maintain healthy diet, you can maintain sugar levels. And I want to demystify the fact that people say, if you're diabetes, then you don't need to see any fruit next to you. That's a wrong information. A diabetic person can still eat fruits, except that there needs to be a healthy balance. This healthy balance can only be prescribed by an expert, who is called a dietitian. So the role of nutrition in healthcare has not been well understood. And as I mentioned, the different specialties in nutrition, we have those that are basically targeting curative services. For example, if you go to higher level, renal unit, for example, you need a renal nutritionist. We have trained expertise in renal nutrition specifically. If you go to ICU, which was not there before, we need a critical care nutritionist, properly trained with competencies to handle ICU patients. Before, it was not there. And even now, it has not been embraced by the medical team. When it comes to child nutrition, for example, we need a pediatrics nutritionist. We have trained specialties in that area. And when it comes to now making decisions, how to select different parenteral and enteral feeds, which are used purely in critical care nutrition, we need a nutritionist who has both the science of nutrition and also the clinical aspect. That is a food scientist as well as a clinical nutritionist. Now, these categories of people have not been recognized in the country because if you go to many of the hospitals, we are talking about nutrition officers. nutrition officer is a term just used to describe anybody who trained in nutrition. Now it is high time we changed and talked about, yes, nutrition officer according to the schemes of service, but clinical nutritionist, which means that they can handle diagnosis and they can be part of the frontline therapeutic team during ward round, so that we have a physician, a consultant, a nutritionist, a pharmacist, and a nurse, all working together targeting one patient. That is why on our side, we have now emphasized on what we call integrated healthcare training at university level diploma. And we're talking about all cadres in health sector must speak the same language for a patient. And that is, we must enhance our preclinical skills to understand the role of a nutritionist in the therapeutic team. So nutrition is a game changer for the nation. If only the Ministry of Health, for example, and the county, both at county and national level, can understand that nutrition can take care of our alarming NCDs when it comes to cardiovascular disease, for example, when it comes to diabetes, and any other, including TB. So if you go to MTRH, for example, today, you'll find that they have embraced the role of nutrition. And you cannot miss nutritionists in every ward. And ward round cannot start without a nutritionist. Why? Because they have a great role. Many people who have died in the hospital, who went when they were sick, they became more sick, is because of how they were fed. I've said this many times. If you're properly fed, then the drugs will find a solution. If you're poorly fed, the drugs will kill you. So we need a nutritionist because they understand the drug-nutrient interaction. A medical doctor does not understand that. A pharmacist may not understand that, even though they have studied drugs. But a nutritionist has gone through nutrition pharmacology, which purely is about food-nutrient interaction, drug-nutrient interaction, nutrient-nutrient interaction. So when this person is put in a health facility, they can correct a prescription that has been made and give us the right food in the hospital. When we just use a catarist to give us food and a nurse to feed, they may not understand the drug-nutrient interaction. So they can provide food that does not go well with certain drugs. And that is why we have health complications. So if we have many nutritionists placed in many facilities that we have in the country, those who are properly trained, they can correct this. And they will bring a better solution for curative services in the healthcare system. And we are doing that very well now.
All right, and I started by saying that many people will talk about, generally, I want to reduce weight and stuff like that, but there are also people who are not getting enough food as well.
Yeah.
The issue of malnutrition is very rife in Kenya, and I'm looking at how we can able to tackle that, the issue of overnutrition and undernutrition.
Yes, let me tell you that we have a triple burden of malnutrition. Many times when people talk about malnutrition, they think of underweight. No one has ever thought about overweight, and no one has ever talked about hidden hunger. When we talk about hidden hunger, we are talking about micronutrient deficiency,
the minerals,
which is a silent killer. Many people don't know that you can look healthy, but because you lack certain elements in terms of minerals and vitamins, your metabolic processes may not go well. So, malnutrition in terms of underweight has been a big problem, and it's not ending because the donor community and the partners, that is their cake. But we can solve it. We can solve malnutrition cases in the country. We are losing 374 billion as at 2022 Kenyan shillings because of malnutrition. Because of malnutrition. Now, overnutrition has now been known to be the the problem of the rich. But that's not true. Now, overnutrition is among the poor. Why? Because the poor will rush for cheap, fast foods. The rich is now going back to the traditional diet. So if we are not careful, we'll have more overnutrition in the rural communities compared to the cities. So for us to tackle malnutrition, we need what we call a multi-sectoral approach. So the healthcare providers must take the approach of interdisciplinary action on nutrition, because we have policymakers here. We also have healthcare providers, and we have nutritionists that have been left out in all aspects of primary healthcare. If you hear the primary healthcare being mentioned, they will be looking at the nurse, the clinical officer, the medical doctor as key. They are forgetting these nutritionists, and they say they will just get into the bus. But primary healthcare is not about screening of cancer. It's not about screening of diabetes. It's also about teaching people how to live healthy, from hygiene to food selection, and also how to take care of their lifestyle in general when it comes to food choice. That has never appeared anywhere in the write-up of policymakers at county and even national level. So we can tackle malnutrition if we are serious that we have to bring everybody on board. And more important, when we think about this person who focuses on prevention, this is the nutritionist.
And before we look at nutrition and the healthcare, just one last question in regards to the role of nutrition in preventing and managing chronic diseases. I'm talking about diabetes, heart diseases, and even cancer in the country.
Yeah. You know, when we talk about role of nutrition, we are talking about food that I said and the nutrient in it. When you eat healthy from the perspective that I've described as variety or across food groups, chances are that you will feed your body properly, particularly when you focus on the recommended portion sizes. When you have a balanced diet, the body system has a way of managing itself to fight disease. When you talk about a theory like atherosclerosis, which is behind the cardiovascular disease, basically is about the clogging of triglycerides in the vessels. You can reverse that by reducing the bad fat intake and doing physical exercise, so that you can, instead of depositing in the lumen, you can pull out fat in the lumen when you do exercise due to increased levels of high density lipoprotein cholesterol. That is a very big term, but it simply means that when you exercise, instead of having fat clogging within the vessel to increase the blood, to reduce the volume and increase blood pressure, which then has weight on the heart, you are creating space for blood to flow, and that will bring health back to normal. The body itself will do it, because the body is created by God to do it on its own. Yes.
And how has the training of nutritionists and evolved in Kenya since you passed your act? I think it was in 2007.
Yes, the act was passed in 2007. That is the Nutritionists and Dietitians Act, to train nutritionists better. I want to give a gratitude to the authors of the act, like Professor Julio Jambo, who really worked very hard to make sure that this passed through Parliament and made it a self-regulatory act. The evolution, initially in Kenya, nutritionists were trained as domestic workers.
Are you serious?
Yes. And so everybody else...
And it's in the medical field, we know very well.
Yes, and then it went to home science and technology, home economics, until in 2010, when we decided that we now have to get nutrition to track and try to come up with a curriculum called Nutrition and Dietetics that now produces BSc in Nutrition and Dietetics and diploma, and then now going to specializations. So the evolution of nutrition is that the so-called domestic scientists were meant to be kitchen nutritionists. That's why when you go to the hospital, you'll find that nutrition unit is put somewhere in Mabati, and then they are expected to be in the kitchen. That is not the position for the kitchen, for the nutritionist. They are supposed to be in the wards, in the current training. So right now, we have made a curriculum that is medical-oriented. And if you look at the Health Act, you'll find that nutrition has been classified as a medical course. Now we are training people on competency building based on preclinical skills to understand the human anatomy, understand also the physiology, so that when they're dealing with human beings, they know exactly what they're feeding. They must know the right position of the stomach, for example, and where to inject food when somebody cannot eat through the mouth. That is ostomy and sometimes nasogastric. That is a nutritionist. That nutritionist is not understood by a medical physician. That nutritionist has not been understood by the policymakers, but they are existing. So right now we have specialists in the medical care, all the way from field to fork and to hospital. So they are all trained, and we have that at the university level, at middle level colleges, and of course KMTC and other TVET institutions.
And how has KNDI actually shaped up or broadened the understanding of this? Because from where you've told us you came from to now, and also you can touch on the position of nutritionists and dietitians in healthcare sector in the country as we wrap up.
As we wrap up, I think since the creation of the Act, we have come up with very, very good innovative ways to access the public, either physically by training qualified professionals who, when we license them publicly, we also inform Kenyans that they exist, and we encourage them to work within their environments through private practice. And also we have a number of public platforms we use, particularly our conferences and webinars, where we teach people on matters of nutrition. And very soon it will go beyond the professionals to the public. Now, we are saying that the only way to go is when we check on our diet. So many people who populate our curative centers, health facilities, are people who could have been stopped at household level by just teaching them how to feed properly and how to take care of their hygiene and the physical activities. A nutritionist is properly trained in that area. And so we can have nutrition taking the core or the heart of primary health care, and then just deal with the extreme cases for the curative services.
All right.
Thank you.
And we wrap up. What should we look out for and what should we avoid during this festive season?
During this festive season, avoid too much.
Avoid too much.
When you take anything too much, it can choke you. So when you're selecting, look at variety, look at food groups, get the expertise from existing nutritionists, and select food in a healthy manner. But be careful not to take too much.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course, the nyamas will be, will be
so
there.
don't take a lot of nyama.
Don't take a lot. All right, thank you so much. That has been Dr. David Okeyo, who is the CEO of the Kenya Nutritionist and Dietitians Institute, putting into perspective the role of nutrition and dietetics in healthcare, and also how to watch our diets. And it's a good thing that you have also told us how to identify what is the difference between nutrition and dietitians. And thank you so much for making time for that.
Thank you.
That's why we put a cap on KBC News Check today and this year. We'll be happy holidays. We will be back with News Check next year on behalf of everyone who worked tirelessly all around the year to make this broadcast a success. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful and Merry Christmas. My name is Njue, and Lensa Odingo is our sign language interpreter for this program. I'm giving my baton to the Swahili desk with the Kasichana Masha coming in next. Have a good day.
Ueno is home to one of Tokyo's great terminal railway stations. Each day it handles 150,000 passengers. At the heart of the district lies Ueno Park. This is an old park. In 2023, it celebrated its 150th anniversary. Despite its big city location, it's a great place to enjoy the seasons as they pass. One of the park's main features is this 400-year-old temple. It was important to the Tokugawa shoguns during their rule over Japan. Back then, the temple's 100-hectare grounds were a favorite leisure spot for the people. As Japan entered the modern age, these temple grounds became the nation's first public park. New buildings inspired by Western culture sprang up around its edges. The area became a center of culture for Tokyo. Let's follow the changing seasons in Ueno Park. The park is at its busiest in spring, when the cherry trees blossom. Over 3 million visitors come to see the sakura in bloom. With about 1,200 magnificent cherry trees, this is one of Japan's most popular spots to go cherry blossom viewing. After about 2 weeks, the sakura petals fall. But they're quickly followed by the park's splendid hydrangeas. The arrival of summer brings fresh colours. Shinobazu Pond along the south side of the park becomes bright with lotus flowers. Ueno Zoo is